Hi everyone, let's get started. So I'm currently working on episode 2 of my series, but I've actually just put it away for a moment because it's proving a little difficult. It's a challenge trying to put these together. I'm pretty early in my kind of like YouTube journey. Yeah, I'm just taking my time, making my way through it. I'm kind of glad I get to pause because last night I got a call from my parents. I thought it was going to be way more serious than it was. My dad was like, hey, I want to just talk to you about something, which always kind of gets your back up as a kid. But it turns out it was about the Superbowl performance of Kendrick Lamar the other night. My parents are not rubes. They devour a lot of different culture, but I think they both recognize that they weren't maybe as read in to Kendrick and his music and kind of the history of him. Maybe they know him slightly more from afar than they do other artists. But I think they knew enough to know that his performance and in particular the references to Drake and the references to the battle were not to be sort of taken at just kind of a surface level, that there was something deeper going on. And I think they just wanted me to kind of give my perspective on it. And so, yeah, this is a little kind of sidestep away from the main series, and this is going to be called Instructions for Dancing at the Superbowl. So the first thing I think that it's really important to say about this is that Kendrick Lamar is actually a genius. I do think that's a term that gets thrown around a lot. I think it's like world class in football, right? It's probably a much smaller club than we'd like to imagine. And I think that probably our attempts at choosing who belongs in that club are somewhat inaccurate. I think sometimes we miss people who maybe aren't as glamorous as others. But I think that I feel pretty confident describing Kendrick Lamar as a genius. I think that rap and hip hop has had quite a few false dawns. I think we've had very smart, intellectual people, but I don't think we've ever seen someone who displayed the kind of, art of war mentality that Kendrick did. I think Lupe Fiasco was wonderful. I think for a while, it has to be said, Kanye West was seen as the genius. And he is in one area. In many other areas, he's a complete moron. I also think that like a lot of conscious rappers who've come up over the years, whether it was your Nas's, your Commons, your Talib Kweli's, your Mos Def's, I think those guys have always been seen as like the smart ones. But ultimately, I think Kendrick is displaying a very specific type of genius that is rare in filmmaking, that is rare in art, that is rare in live art, that is rare in literature. I do think that these people appear very infrequently across history, and I think we're very fortunate to have one living in the body of a rapper right now. When I think of Kendrick Lamar, I consider him alongside, writers like I've been reading Ralph Ellison's Invisible Man. I consider him in that world. I consider him with Denis Villeneuve. I don't just compare him to other rappers. I have to compare him to other geniuses that I see in and amongst other art forms. I think you got to realize as well, like he won a Pulitzer Prize. That just doesn't happen. That doesn't happen for rappers. It doesn't really happen for musicians. I think we have to start to acknowledge that maybe this person requires more thought than the average person will often be afforded. And so when you engage with his work, if you're only engaging with it at a surface level, ultimately, I don't think it's right for you to comment. I don't think it's right for you to even have an opinion. You haven't given this the due diligence it deserves. And I think often this is a really difficult thing to do with Black genius.
One thing I cannot stand is fake deepness. I come to watch the Super Bowl to watch a performance. I didn't come to think.
Whether you liked it or not, it's going down in history as an important Super Bowl performance.
No, it's going down as the worst halftime show ever.
I thought so.
It was very like, okay, I guess. Let's just get to Not Like Us. Let's just get to are they going to let the pedophile word fly on Fox?
We have a real tendency to kind of sneer at like Black brilliance a lot. I don't know if any of you saw it, but there was a really weird moment with the show Supercell where that podcast ShitsnGigs, one of them, I don't know their names, but one of them was talking about the show and sort of articulating that he probably wouldn't watch it because he'd only really heard about it from Black audiences and therefore he couldn't trust that it was brilliant.
I don't want this to come across the wrong way.
Preach.
It's also very London Black culture specific.
Preach.
When something like this happens, where a local South London guy has made something, the culture like to gas it up a bit, which is fair. So for the first few months, I kind of just wait until we get the real reviews. Because I'm hearing, I'm just gonna hold my hands up, only the blacks have watched it so far.
That's a problem. I think that's a deeper problem for him to navigate, but I do think that's a problem wholesale when it comes to dealing with the things that we make and whether or not those things are regarded as brilliant. And so when it comes to someone like Kendrick Lamar, it's almost like until he gets seen by the white establishment as brilliant, it's very hard for everybody else to acknowledge it. But from the beginning, he's been a genius. I remember playing Rigor Mortis in my family kitchen back in Leicester, and there was a guy installing like Sky TV in our room. I can't remember which, maybe it was Virgin Media, I don't know. Other brands are available. And he like left the living room to come into the kitchen to go, who is this? And this was like at the beginning of his career. And this guy was like, yeah, I've not been listening to hip hop for a while, but this has me like engaged. I really want to know about this. So I think from the beginning, people who love rap, people who love hip hop were really aware that this guy was special. But I think that essentially what that means is that when you approach his work, you have to accept that you're going to need to work slightly harder than you would for other artists, maybe. And you're going to need to go deeper than usual. Kind of reminds me of the TV show Lost. Like, whenever that show would be on a Tuesday, on a Wednesday here in England, everybody was talking about it, and everybody was theorizing, and everybody was bringing up their own ideas, and you could go on internet forums, and there was a number you could call, and there was stuff to do with the Hanzo Foundation and the founders of the Hanzo Foundation, and there were all these things that never really even appeared on the show, but they became kind of part of the wider culture of watching that TV show. And I think that no one ever really got those theories right. Often people were like looking in the wrong waters. They were deep enough, but they were over in the Pacific when we were all over in the Atlantic. I don't think it was about being right. Just like I don't think with Kendrick it's about being right. I think he's saying, I'm going to go deep with this and I'm going to ask you guys to come with me. You might not find the treasure that I've buried, but you'll find other treasures. And I think that's a really fascinating way to approach his sound, essentially.
My intent was to always keep, I think from day one was to always keep the nature of it as a sport. You know, I don't care how motherfuckers look at it as far as like, as a collaborative effort, you know, that's cool too, but I love when artists grit their teeth. Like, I still watch battle raps. I still watch Smack URL from Murder Mook to Lux to Tay-Rock, you know, my bro Daylight. This has always been the core definition of who I am, and it's been that way since day one. So I don't think it was a thing for this year. It was always just a continuum. And what I will say about this year, it was more from a space where I think a lot of people was putting rap to the back, and you didn't see that. You didn't see that grit. You didn't see that bite anymore. So I always took that in consideration in going into any type of my music.
There's something that I think happens with Kendrick that I think is a little bit irresponsible, which is that people don't really listen to him when he talks. They love his music and they love the moves, but when he does interviews, when he describes why he's doing what he's doing, I think people don't quite take him seriously. There's a really great example of this when he did an interview with SZA in, I think it's Harper's Bazaar, I think that's the magazine. And she asked him, you know, what does not like us mean to you? And he gave this really beautiful response about it being about the man that he represents, about recognizing his mistakes, about believing in things, about morals, about values. And of course, Twitter sort of kind of like, in a very positive way, sort of sneered at this article a little bit and went, okay, say what you want, but it is just a diss track about Drake. I do understand that response because I think it's like, it's very hard to sort of unload yourself from the weight of all of, it's very funny. Like it's a lot of the lines, the line about Sexy Red, the line about when he's mimicking the Canadian like accent and dialect, all the Crody stuff, like there's so much in this beef that was so funny. Like I laughed myself silly when I listened to some of these, you know, and all the reactions about it online. So of course there is this huge thing that you have to pay attention to, but you can't ignore what he's trying to tell you. You can't ignore what it is he's saying about his own art. Very rarely do we actually get to hear from Kendrick in that kind of manner. And so when I think about that Twitter response and when I think about what Kendrick Lamar's saying, I weirdly think about something a little bit left field, which is Boyd Crowder, which is a character from the TV show Justified. Boyd Crowder is essentially an outlaw. He wants to sell drugs. He wants to, commit crimes. He wants to rob banks. He wants to make money in any way possible other than, the way that everybody else is making money. And he lives in a small, impoverished town called Harlan County. And there's a period in his sort of existence where he stops doing crime, and he gets very religious, and then he kind of gets out of religion. He tries to just work a normal job, but eventually he's pulled back into it. He can't escape it, and he wants to be a leader again. He's thinking about the Ballad of Boyd Crowder. And there's a moment in it where he talks about needing to deliver a message to let people know he's back, to let people know he is back as the overarching crime lord of Harlan County. And he talks about, one, needing to send a message, but two, needing to send it through the right messenger. You can kind of see a little bit of this in this scene here.
Now, once we got infrastructure, we got everything in line, we'll have to make our grand debut.
Well, what do you got in mind?
Well, there are any number of ways of getting out the message. The trick is picking the right messenger.
Right after this scene, he's interrupted by a character called Dickie Bennett, who then proceeds to insult him and sort of lay claim to, again, Harlan County, as if he's going to be the number one gang leader of it all. And then this line is said.
Nothing. We just found our messenger.
So after this, in the following episode, Boyd Crowder robs and steals from Dickie Bennett, and that's not only his way of making a bit of money, but it's also his way of letting everyone know we're back. This is who we are. This is how we do business. And I do think that there are certain parallels that I make here with Dickie Bennett and Drake, and with Boyd Crowder and Kendrick. I'm not suggesting for a second that illegality is taking place, but I am suggesting that Kendrick had a deeper and more prominent message he was trying to put out into the world, and therefore he needed the right messenger. And I think that it was always going to be Drake. It was always going to be him. People have to remember that many points in this rap beef, Kendrick warned him, said, don't go too deep, because I'll take it there and you won't be able to recover. This was always something that could have stayed friendly. I think there's a bit of a debate about Meet the Grahams, which was a song that sort of took place sort of towards the latter stages of the beef, where it had only really been released an hour after Drake put out Family Matters.
Kendrick dropped.
No.
Yeah, hell no. Look.
No way.
No.
What is
going
on? No.
Fuck no.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Meet the Grahams.
Oh, what the fuck? Yo, what is this?
And I think ultimately, I think that had Drake not mentioned his family, had Drake not stepped over a line that Kendrick had clearly laid out, I think that ultimately Kendrick would have stayed his hand. I think he would have kept it friendly. I think he would have kept it competitive. It would have been harsh shots, but I don't think it ever would have reached the level it did. And so I do think that Kendrick always had a message, and it was only through Drake that he was able to put that out into the world. And it was only because of Drake's own actions that things just got really heavy, things just got really weighted really quickly. I think the question then is, what is the message, right? I think that there was a really weird misreading that happened about the song Not Like Us, and also about other songs as well along this beef. I remember Michael Eric Dyson kind of siding with Drake a little bit and talking about, black versus not black and all of this. And it was like, I don't think that's what the core of this is. And then there were weird think pieces online from people who I think were just completely missing the point and were talking about the allegations. I don't think any of that mattered. This was about culture versus commercialism, in my opinion, and I think in the opinions of many others. And I think at the root of it, he was literally trying to say, you're not like us. And I think we get really distracted by the A minor of it all. I think we get really distracted by the Serena Williams comment and all of these things. And so it leads us to misread things really, really quickly. And this happened in the Super Bowl performance. He was wearing a chain, and on the chain it had a lowercase a. And there were loads of comments sort of in the hours after going, oh my God, that's a lowercase a, it means A minor. People have recognized that actually it's not. It has all to do with his record label, PG Lang. Then on top of that, there was a really odd moment that I'm still struggling to decipher, which was Serena Williams crip walking, right? Serena Williams is crip walking. There have been references to Serena Williams in this rap beef, particularly to do with Drake kind of mentioning her in a manner that Kendrick thought was rude, mentioning her husband in certain songs. I actually haven't heard those songs. And so I totally understand why people would assume that's why she was there. But I think you got to look at some of the messaging. You got to look at Sam Jackson playing Uncle Sam, and then you've got to think about Serena Williams, her career. You got to think about Wimbledon. And you got to remember that she Crip walked at Wimbledon, that she won the tournament. She got up, she celebrated in a way that felt comfortable to her, and then she was torn apart in the media. She was torn apart for being
too loud, too reckless, too ghetto.
And so I think that I'm not saying that you're wrong for thinking that that had everything to do with Drake, but I think when it comes to Kendrick Lamar, you have to always look a level deeper. And I think that's ultimately all I'm really trying to say here, that this is an artist who it's unfair to treat at a surface level. People are already doing this online, on YouTube and on TikTok and on all other apps as well. I'm seeing people talk about the choreography, noticing when the flag splits and they're reading meaning into that. There's all the Samuel L. Jackson skits. People are analyzing the words. There's also so many lyric changes. Like, he performed a song at the beginning of the show that isn't even on any of his albums. It's on, it's like a teaser for the album. You have to go on YouTube to watch it. You can't just listen to it on Spotify. This just shows that, like, he didn't really care that much about whether or not you could sing along at home. When he was asked what you could expect from the show, he said, storytelling.
It's your uncle, Sam. And this is the great American game.
I think that every element of that show had to do with telling that story. I saw a lot of debate online, particularly on The Breakfast Club with Charlamagne tha God, arguing that maybe he didn't need to do Not Like Us. Maybe he didn't need to perform it.
I think he had to do the song. I mean, it was the biggest hit of his career. He just won 5 Grammys. Every sports team uses that. The Olympics used it. It's one of the most popular catchphrases in the last 2 years. I think he had to do that song.
I don't think he had to do it.
That was his biggest song of his career.
That's what bothers me when y'all say he had to do it.
He had to.
This is Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick has one of the most stellar solo catalogs of any artist ever.
That's facts.
Period. I mean,
right?
He's one of the most critically acclaimed artists ever. He won a Pulitzer Prize. He is not Like Us. Not Like Us is a moment in time for Kendrick. It does not define him.
But that's his biggest song that he's done.
Sure, but it does not define him or who he is.
I actually kind of think both are right. I think he didn't need to perform it because of all of those reasons, but he absolutely did need to perform it because it connected back to this whole story. I think that it's important to recognize that, like, Kendrick Lamar is never making for just the moment. He's attempting to make moments that will last a lifetime. And I think that whether or not you enjoy it, whether or not you think he stuck the landing, I think we have to appreciate the attempt because there are so few artists trying to work like that. And so in order to celebrate it properly, I think you have to look at it properly. I think that's the only way that you do that. But yeah, that's it.